Give it a second. It's started recording. So go ahead, Sue.
Okay, well, we shall begin. That's too bad. So I just want to welcome everyone to the first meeting of the Ad Hoc Art in Schools Committee. And thank you all for attending and showing your interest in this project. We acknowledge that we are honored to gather on the unceded territories of the Squamish and the Shishelt First Nations peoples. Emash, welcome. No Chimenwaha. That's a little bit harder to say. That's the Squamish greetings. No Chimenwaha. So I would like to call the meeting to order. And the second item on the agenda is scope of the committee. So basically, we just want to talk a little bit amongst ourselves about what we envision the scope of this committee to be. And so first of all, for myself personally, I would like to just clarify, because it took me a while to kind of wrap my head around this. Because the ad hoc committee is called Art in Schools. And just by changing one S, we can get arts in school, which for me meant that arts in school. And of course, we know that we already have arts in school. We have incredible art programs in our schools in all avenues, be it our fine arts or our art classes or music or literature. We have all of those arts. So for me, I had to get back to the exposure of introducing art to our students in our schools. And so that's where I needed to get to. So I had to say that. I had to say that because there's a difference for me. So that's great. So while we talk about the scope, just before we begin to share amongst ourselves of what our vision is for this committee, I just wanted to say that we're here to talk about how we might develop an art in schools policy so that our students will have the opportunity to have some exposure to art in our community so that they may learn, grow, and engage with local artists from various cultures and backgrounds. The draft that we included in the agenda package that was sent to you today is just guidelines on which to proceed and are just ideas to work with. They're sort of just a beginning sort of to wet your whistle and get you familiar with kind of some of the language. The committee itself will develop the terms of reference and guide the whole process. It's yours. I'm the chair. It's yours. The discussion that follows will help us determine which direction to go in realizing this project in our schools. So when we were drafting our policy, it would be really great to know what some of the key components to this idea are, and that the things that we want to focus and discuss tonight. So I'm going to open that up to all of you and just ask you what some of your thoughts have been regarding the vision that you have for this committee. Is there anybody that would like to share? And everyone's quiet. Amanda, go ahead.
I'll share. I mean, I feel like I've talked so much about this and particularly with Sue, and it's you've done a lot of work with your write-up, and it's sort of summarizing the history of the conversations we've been having the last few months about art in school and just the benefit not from an arts program, but from the physical environments that our students are learning in, having art available to them both in permanent and rotating installations. And you've tapped into all those things that I'm really excited about that art provides to students, which is, improved mental health, sense of safety, belonging. So when we're focusing on our strategic goals of mental health and well-being and inclusion, art is a resource that we can use, not just in the classroom, but in our buildings, and it can reflect back the community that we have, and it can be used as a really informal teaching tool where students can engage themselves in this dialogue and exploration and practice critical thinking skills. It doesn't need to be part of arts fabrication, but it can, through the very nature, as you pointed out some of those examples, like the story pole, and Deborah Laprini talked about it the other day, is that having an artist on premise creates an interaction with students, so it's more informal, out of the classroom learning, but you can weave that into the learning. So that's sort of what I'm envisioning, is a district that really supports and puts focus on and endorses schools to create places and spaces for permanent and temporary art to be.
Exactly.
I mean, I would like to see it in all of, like, I don't think, why does the maintenance department buildings not need art? Like, I think it can really benefit, and it really is focused on our students, but when we're taking care of our staff, I'm thinking they also could benefit from similar installations in all of our buildings and spaces.
Exactly. Thanks, Amanda. That's all great stuff for sure. And is there anybody else that would like to share their thoughts on what they have envisioned this to look like for them? Because I would imagine that there are many different, because I know that I have gone through this and thought a lot about it, and I know that we might all have just a very different vision of what we're looking at, and to sort of collaborate and bring that together eventually, so that we can write some terms of reference, and that we can say what we are looking for.
I was going to ask, and maybe Duncan can help with this, because I haven't interacted with the Sunshine Coast Arts Council and perhaps any other organizations that having a policy at the board level for our staff to know that they have the support of the board to be engaging with public art, and what that might look like. And Duncan, you've had a number of interactions with them, and just curious if how that could support that kind of a dialogue with community partners and any other arts institutions, organizations on the coast, and maybe even further beyond. I'm not sure if we are just necessarily focused on the coast. What would help us if there's some kind of traveling exhibit from UBC that a principal saying to the dean of arts or the museum or whatever that might be, hey, we're on the coast, we'd love to have your installation in our school or rotating through our schools over the next year or something like that. Just curious what the thoughts might be around that.
Remember to take myself off mute. That's good. I thinking about having a policy would, I think, be really helpful. Our relationship with the Sunshine Coast Arts Council came about actually in a lovely circumstance, like just basically lovely happenstance. And Sadira, who is the current coordinator, reached out to me and said, well, I hear that you've got a number of projects going on in the school and that you're looking for artists in residence. And so she actually reached out to us. I think a policy would be really helpful in terms of solidifying who is on the coast, because we have an amazing array of artists, and connecting them to schools can sometimes be a challenge, and this year particularly so because of COVID. But having that foundation to work from, I think, would be really helpful. So in terms of the benefits, absolutely. We have a partnership with the Sunshine Coast Arts Council in the last couple of years that we have worked with a number of artists. Nadina Tandy is one of the primary ones. She's come into classes pre-COVID and taught a variety of lessons. And then our students actually visited the Arts Council, worked in the studio in a follow-up lesson. She did a lot of work with multimedia at a variety of different grade levels. And what can I say? The benefits were amazing. We had one parent who relayed that Nadina was teaching almost like a growth mindset, an artistic mindset, and that the language that she was teaching in the class was coming home, and she was basically relaying that neither one of her sons were particularly communicative about what was happening at school, but suddenly one of the sons was coming back and he couldn't stop talking about all the things that they were learning through the program, and how joyful they were being able to create these different pieces through the program. And we've got numbers of other examples where our relationship with the Sunshine Coast Art Council has been incredible. We were going to follow that model again this year, where we were going to scale it out more and have a greater variety of artists. But our plans got drawn sideways a little bit just because of discomfort around working face to face. And Zoom is wonderful, but it doesn't replace some of that tactile or that do it with me kind of approach. So we are going to table it and look at doing it next year. But we've gone on full board with a program that's actually going to include a lot of other schools, and it relates to basically the forest at Roberts Creek, and how there is a connection between the land and art. And so there's also that environmental perspective that's being brought into, and there's a great deal of science around ecosystems that are being put into play. So it's creative thinking, critical thinking, and local knowledge as well, all being incorporated. So to draw it back, I think from my point of view, it would be very helpful to have an overarching policy and sort of a reference point in terms of who's out there, because we do have a wealth of local knowledge and a vast array of local talent as well. And it would be great to tap into that from experiential learning perspective, but also really from an apprentice-like perspective, that these are really worthwhile ways of making a living, and they're available to people. I think we tend to think of them as being something that only a select few get to participate in, but really it's a necessity that we're having to be creative in order to make our way into adulthood and beyond. So I would fully support an umbrella policy. I think it would be really helpful, and it also helps frame the working out of the arts committee that's looking at the strategic plan and how we can infuse arts in various threads, not just artistic expression, but also the environment, and also Indigenous learning and Indigenous ways of knowing. So I will leave it there.
Go ahead, Pam.
Yeah, so I'm just looking at the policy draft. Like, I know it's just an initial draft, the first draft and what have you. Having been a part of the audience in a lot of the examples at the bottom, the welcoming pole at Gibson's Elementary and the gnome at Cedar Grove, and watching the children's faces or the students' faces at Pender Harbor with the carving in the woodwork. I totally appreciate the thinking of having this arts policy and working with the arts committee. My question is, this is really long. So with having it in our strategic plan, with having an arts committee, with already having arts programs, how can we make this something not quick and to the point, but something more to the point, and what we are actually looking for? Like, I've never actually been a part of policy writing, despite this being my second term. So I'm not quite sure where we go on this. I have no qualms with having it. And by the way, I do agree with you in art in schools as opposed to arts in school. That's it.
Oh, thanks, Pam. And those are all great points for sure. And I do agree with keeping it simple. And I know that with that draft that went out today, there was a lot of extra information that was somebody else's, that was from somewhere else, that would almost immediately, it was just for information purposes only and would disappear because that isn't ours, you know. But there's some things that we can draw from that that may be really helpful, but it's not ours. So that would probably go. And I really thought of you when we were putting together the information about what we'd already seen in some of the art installations with the book gnome at Cedar Grove, and that you were there and that you had history with Darcy, and you know, really touched your heart. And we certainly did see that day the reactions of the children, but also there was a lot of community members there and a lot of people from the art community. And it was so well received, and it was just a great moment. And then of course we've got the totem at Gibson's Elementary that is just so remarkable and has such history with the Squamish Nation. So yeah, so those are the things. But as far as that piece of paper that came out today, certainly there is a lot of opportunity to shrink it down and simplify it for us that fits with us. And so it was just sort of a starting point, a conversation point, and then the rest you can do whatever you like. So that's great. Amanda, go ahead.
Just as we were speaking, I'm curious about if we want to do a name change, because I'm wondering if art in schools becomes too limiting. So is it art in schools and our district? If we're going to be including the buildings that belong to our district? If we have art in school, would that exclude the other buildings that we have from having art in them? I don't know. Patrick, what would you think?
Yeah. It's something that in various things that I write, sometimes I have to consciously think, don't forget about the maintenance department. You know, yeah. I'm writing to all staff today about COVID, for instance, and I wrote about that and had to remember, don't just say, talk to your principal. If you have any questions, talk to your principals and managers. And, you know, remember that we are mostly schools, but we are also this, and we are also the school board office. And so I think maybe some other wording too could help with that, just to make sure that that is clear and that everybody feels included, because the maintenance people are spending an awful lot of time always in schools, but they may not necessarily associate them with those schools as staff and an intimate part of those communities. So I think that's valid to figure out a way to make sense of that, whether it's a district arts policy, maybe just an arts policy. The challenge for me for all of this is that line between what the district committee that's working on an arts plan is, and I think just as we were talking here, it's pretty clear that this is about community interaction with schools and seeing art, feeling art, perhaps having art presentations, but it's not the curriculum. It's the incidental curriculum, it's the cultural connection, it's the communication, it's all of that stuff. And I love it. I think it's really important stuff. And it's neat that we have those examples of the pole at Gibson's and the big plaque outside this building as well, that we've got that lovely big, I couldn't believe it when I first saw here, that's cool. You know, that's all really good stuff. And so we can build on that with this policy. So, but the exact language, yeah, it's an interesting question. I'm not sure what the best words are for that.
Amanda?
Yeah, I was gonna say that I think as a district, like I haven't been in the maintenance department, but otherwise there's so many wonderful examples of how we're actually writing policy to confirm and endorse doing what we're doing. I think that's really important. There are lots of great examples of how we have used art to reflect our history and build a sense of community and have it as a teaching tool on our property, and it's yeah, I think it's just expanding that. And I do hope, and I don't know, Duncan, if you're the person to do this, that when we do have like a first draft of the actual policy, that there is a link to the Arts Council and the art communities that we're working with to see if it speaks to what would support them to engage with us in a really meaningful way. Because I think, yeah, perhaps it becomes art policy general, and then from there maybe has some points around the presence of art in our buildings, and then secondary to that, because I can't imagine that we would be, although I think it's important for other departments to have art in, that we wouldn't necessarily have an artist in residence at the maintenance, or art, an art example at the maintenance, because it's not as accessible community location where we can have that wider interaction. But so maybe sort of separating, I don't know if this is more regulation or more policy, but I guess if I think about organizing it, maybe in the circle of cares of our strategic plan. So students, staff, and community, and then there's a paragraph about how art shows up in each of those places, or what art means in each of those places. I don't know, I'm just talking out loud.
But I think that talking out loud is how we're going to arrive at where we're going, because I think we all feel that. And I honestly myself think that it will evolve into maybe a name change. It won't be anything drastic, but I think that it'll evolve, and all of a sudden we'll have that aha moment where we'll go, that's what we're talking about. Because that's where I've been right from the very, very beginning. That's the struggle I've been having since the very beginning, is I was understanding the concept, but I couldn't put it into a few words what I wanted to say. And so I think that's great. I mean, it might be possible right now, Erica, to put up that terms of reference and just sort of go through it quickly and touch on a few points that that we can share that stand out, or that registered, that kind of struck us, and it could be different for everybody. But I know that for me, the most wonderful thing out of all of it is the research that has been done about the effect that it has on our students in the social emotional realm, and the mental health wellness, and we're talking I see it all reflected back to the strategic plan and to the core competencies, and I see it being such a valuable thing. Duncan spoke to that about students who were going home and relaying, even just through their language, what they had experienced. And so that for me is the great one. So the first paragraph improves critical thinking. And I am not an artist, and I draw stick people, but I have memories of school where we went and sat out in the forest and drew the trees and everything else in our own vision, in our own hand, and I'm a writer, so I'm gonna write the story instead of draw it. But even so, I know that what it does to the mind, it expands the mind, so it's all good. And then we got into a little bit of what benefits. Of course, all of this, I mean, we could only have just put the titles: improve tolerance and empathy, and improve test scores. Now, when I went on, started doing the research, which was quite a few months ago now, we started looking at BC feedback. And this is not what this particular list of things are, but it was very, very similar when it spoke of the tolerance and empathy components, and it spoke about the growth of the students in resiliency and all of these things. So even though this will probably come out, I think it was important today to put that in because it really speaks to, I know there's a lot of programs, Indigenous and Aboriginal studies regarding art. I personally have many Indigenous artist friends, both here on the Sunshine Coast and throughout the province. Oh, all across Canada, because when I wrote my book, the person that wrote the chapter that I wrote on Chief Dan George was an artist from the Twin Rivers in Ontario. I think it's Ontario, isn't it? And Patrick might know that because anyway, he was just a brilliant artist, and we had a lot of communication at the time because I was given the authority to use his drawing of Chief Dan George at that time. So there is a bevy of amazing and remarkable opportunities to bring, to our children in the schools from so many cultures and so many backgrounds, and it's big. We want to write a slim policy, but it's a big topic. And it's got so many, and I mean, the artists on the Sunshine Coast, I'm sure that they have a focus, I'm sure that they have an association, but individually, when you do the art crawl and you go out and you go to all of their homes and everything, you meet all of these artists, and I know so many of them would just love the opportunity to share their work, their art, and their stories, because they've all got amazing stories about their life as an artist. Marlene Vermeulen, who does those amazing scenes of oceans. I mean, they're drawing things that are real, that come to life. So that's the whole thing there. Then when we got back down the list here to the objectives, then we got sort of back to our own stuff again. And that might play a little bit into what that part of that draft, or part of those terms of reference that speak to us and our community. And then policy development, well, who knows? It's up to all of you where you want to go with that. But just, I think right now, familiarizing ourselves with the concept of it all. And it's a great beginning. And then of course at the end we went into the examples that we spoke of that we've seen so far, and the impact that they've had on our students and our schools in our district. I have to say at the bottom there, the mention of the Coast Salish collection that was gifted to our district, to our school district. My brother was a priest who spent his career on First Nations at back in the day, sometimes residential schools, but he was the vicar, and he was in Alert Bay, and so he was at the where Maynard Johnny Jr. is from, the Kwakwali Nation at Alert Bay, and my brother loved languages, and he learned to speak Kwakwali when he was in Alert Bay. That was one of his postings. So there's some great history there as well. So that's where that document came from today, but it can certainly be streamlined. If anybody has any thoughts.
So I put a few things in the chat just to, like, you've done a really great job of creating this thorough document. I think I noticed that you've referenced some things, but I can't find the sources. But I guess I put sort of like the overall scope, I think, if I'm sort of summarizing the conversations, to define the benefit that art has on humans or on people, I don't know how we want to refer to them, and outlining the purpose of art in all of our buildings, using the student, staff, and community model to create guiding principles to assist the district in making decisions on art we select to have in our buildings. I don't know. I kind of took a stab at the terms of reference can totally be wordsmith, but again, a committee that will work to create policy that will confirm the importance and benefit of art in all of our buildings, and it will outline priorities and preference for art so that the entire district can see themselves in the art found in our buildings and properties. I think important part of the policy for me is that there's diversity in medium and type and subject.
And I think diversity in, we have that cultural array of incredible backgrounds. We have strong communities within our community that that have historical art practices and have continued them on and utilize them here. And it's endless. It really is. And so that diversity is really strong.
And can you see Duncan's hand there? I know it's hard to see.
Oh, I'm sorry, Duncan. I didn't. Go ahead, Duncan.
Thanks. I hope I'm not breaking with any protocol or anything. I just had a clarifying question. I was wondering if the scope of the policy is going to be focused on the visual art, or is it going to be inclusive of other forms of art like dance and dramatic theater? There are a lot of creative artistic performances that go on in the district that I think aren't just limited to the visual arts. So.
And my feeling is, you know, like, and this is why I want to really try to keep a fine line between, because I know that we address a lot of those art forms in the school and do already with our fine arts program and all of those things. Not to say that it can't cross over to this program, to this it's the language that I'm really having a hard time with. I'm really struggling, and I don't know why. I guess to separate the two, because they are two very different things. And so I don't know. I think that would be up to the discretion of the committee.
If I may?
Yes, go ahead, Pam.
So my query is, art is often very subjective. So I'm kind of wondering, do we have, or will we have some sort of established category of art? And at that, like if we are having someone that's donating art to us and it doesn't meet our requirements, you know, Thelma donated that, and now Louise is donating this, but we took Thelma's but can't take Louise's. Is that going to get us into a pickle? So I think we do have to have some sort of guidelines of what qualifies as art for a school district. You know, I mean, it's definitely subjective as well. So that's kind of where I don't want to, you know, I don't want to step on any toes or put anybody's nose out of joint in that respect.
Amanda.
Yeah, and I'm going to turn this over to Patrick, but I'm kind of imagining those details would come out of a regulation, that the policy wouldn't be so prescriptive.
It would, and it is. We do a lot of this kind of work, and it is definitely a point of sensitivity, especially something as subjective as the arts, where if someone creates a nude figure that for one person is artistic and suggestive, to another person it's erotic, and we don't want erotic pictures in our schools. So you know, that's something that we have to navigate with resources in our libraries, and there are going to be people that when somebody appeals to the superintendent for a decision that they didn't appreciate that Duncan made, and they appeal to the superintendent, and I agree, yeah, and we can't have that in the schools, and they go to the board, and you get it to appeal our decision. But it is a challenge, and so definitely in some kind of a regulation format after the the policy development, it would be something to consider. I think it's a really valid point, and good policy, good regulations do make for clarity, and you know, it can be vetted through the community, as we all know, and then once we do agree on the rules of operation, that then we can mostly solve those issues as they come up. But it's a very valid point about who decides what's appropriate in many matters of what comes into schools. And so yes, I think a regulation to support that would be important. It's a really good point. I was curious if I can go in a slightly different tact or a different question. Is we're talking a lot about the community coming into schools. Do you see this policy as something that would also support our schools going out to our community, where we talk about the art projects that are done at Elphinstone Secondary being in the Gibsons Town Hall, or that kind of thing? Is that a piece of this that you would like to see included? You're on the fence, Pam?
I want Pam's heart. Where's Pam's heart there?
We can all practice with our artsy little hearts.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's great if it goes both ways, and again, whatever the committee feels is, there's so much opportunity here. It's, you know, it's open to, of course, there's so many artists. Almost all the artists on the Sunshine Coast have amazing studios. We've, again, go back to the art crawl, and we know that where they, you know, it's all learning. It's all such incredible learning to visit their studios and watch them work. So I don't know what that would look like, but sure. So I guess, oh, go ahead, Duncan.
Well, I would just like to validate that that is a two-way thing. I received a call from a member of the senior care center in Seychelles, and I can't remember the name of the Shorncliffe. And we had sent out some pink hearts during Valentine's Day, and two divisions had sent out the cards, and they had messages in them along with the artwork. And we left it really open-ended for students so they could do whatever they wanted. They just had to have a pink heart, or they had to have some kind of motif with that. Anyway, this resident called and just said what a amazing difference it had made in their lives. Their context right now is one of being essentially locked down. And she used the metaphor of feeling like she was an inmate, not knowing that it was for her safety, but just it felt like that. And then for this to brighten their lives, it just shows the importance of just that two-way piece, that it's not just the community coming in, but also schools giving out. So I really do think that's an important part of the policy.
And of course, right now, I think it's really difficult to perceive what that's all going to look like in the future because of all the, you know, the things, the barriers in the way right now with COVID. It's very hard to look ahead and think about what that will be. But I'm sure that it'll all be possible in the future. I'll stay optimistic about that and hope that's true. Is there anything else that anybody wants to continue to discuss about the terms of reference, or because I think that this is just, you know, being the first meeting, the first gathering, the first committee meeting, that we just have to kind of begin at the beginning. It's going to take a while, I think, to narrow it down to exactly what we're wanting to say, wanting to put into words, wanting to put into the policy. Can we go on to number 4? Is everybody okay with that?
I would just like to say that I think it's exciting. I think there's some really neat notions here that are already coming out of the discussion. So this is neat. Thanks.
And number 4 being?
When we move on to number 4, it is consulting with stakeholders. So, I mean, it's really about what does that look like? You know, what, how do we do that? Who do we connect with, approach, and what does that look like? Does anybody have any ideas?
I think Duncan and Patrick are linked to
Mm-hmm.
the stakeholders. Oh,
It's got it. I heard the Amanda. It's a thing that we have is a bunch of structures that are already in place, which is awesome. That we have the Indigenous Advisory Circle, and we have the DPAC, and we have connections all over the students, of course. That asking the district student leadership team what they think would be interesting to have. What have they seen somewhere else? And so those are some that come to mind. Just the standard committees. Of course, our principals and vice principals are a type of committee, and so that's my go-to to start. Beyond that, community people, and also vetting through some of the policies that the town of Gibson's has. I think I saw that they have one, or maybe Amanda, did you send it to me, or?
I don't think so, but I was looking through municipal art policies to get some framework.
Yeah. So that's a check as well. That's not a person-to-person connection, although it could be, but checking with those kinds of documents as well.
Excellent. Duncan.
Thanks. Well, I think you've got two, not limited to partnerships, but I think they're sort of the two ways currently that schools are bringing in outside artists. One has been community schools. This community schools have received a grant that relates it's well-being related, so it could be sports or it could be art. And so a number of schools have chosen arts, and one of the really exciting ventures moving forward is that both at Chatleach and at Elphinstone, grade 7s are going to have the opportunity to go to an arts program with an artist as well as a social emotional navigator. So there'll be 2 adults, and there's a number of reasons for it behind the rationale. One is to gain more confidence in the secondary setting for grade 7s. A lot of them won't have had the opportunities that past years have had to go and physically visit the building. So this is their chance to do that. It's also a little bit more intimate. It's not quite as overwhelming as going in one cohort and seeing the whole school at once. They'll have a more private viewing, if you will. And then, of course, they're connecting with the artist, and they'll all be doing a variety of different activities. I can't speak to other schools, but our particular school is continuing to build on its relationship with Nadina Tandy, and so she will be the artist responsible for our cohort. And so Langdale students will be going up to Elphinstone starting April 26th. We have to figure out a few things, but they'll be bussed up and then picked up. And so that's one avenue. Community schools has been a real advocate for supporting the arts and enhancing what's already going on in schools in different ways. We've had after school arts program. There's kind of an artistic connection, but it's related in that there was an outdoor program that ran at our school in October through November. So I think that's one really important partnership. And then the other, of course, is the Sunshine Coast Arts Council. The artists in our community are quite diverse, and there's not really an opportunity for them to come together. But the Arts Council has brought a number of artists together and is continuing to loop them in. And so Sadira has been a big part of that. And I think that's also sort of an exciting partnership in terms of scaling out. And it was really good to be part of that meeting today, because there are quite a few other schools now that are getting involved in the Sunshine Coast Arts Council again. And the goal for them is to have their own show build back out. It hasn't had it has had a lower participation rate in the past years. And so that's building back up. So that's a really big goal for them, is to be able to exhibit student work. And Langdale students had quite a bit of their work shown last year. And so we're looking to continue on that, but not just Langdale, but other schools as well. So I just want to acknowledge those 2 partnerships.
So what I'm hearing right now is that we've already begun. Like this is already in motion, and so it's just a matter of formulating our role and what that looks like as a committee, and to ensure that we have the regulations and the policy in place to make sure that we can move forward, safely and efficiently, covering all our bases. That's always good to do. And but we've already had so many incredible things, and I mean the things that you talk about, Duncan, that are happening with your school and in the district they're already happening, and we again, because of COVID, we don't see a lot of that. We weren't able to see the Coast Salish Weave project. We weren't able to come into the schools like we normally would and get a glimpse of some of those things. So I'm sure it was absolutely remarkable, the visits, but we weren't able to be there. But nonetheless, it's still happening. So it's great to hear about the partnerships that are already in place in the community, and we can build on that. And that's exactly, so for me, I see it moving. It's okay if it moves slow. It's heading in a positive direction. It doesn't have to take off, with fireworks. It's moving in the right direction. The energy is here right now, and so it will grow. That's how it works. Good energy. So if anybody has anything else they want to add, I think one of the things that's going to be really important is next steps. What do we do next to ensure that we make all of the connections? And Erica's wonderfully taking notes so that we'll be able to look back and make sense of all of this. It's documented. That's so good. And then decide what we want to do for another meeting, and how we want to schedule those meetings, how often, and what that might look like, and what we need to bring to the table when we do meet again. Does anybody have any ideas on that? Patrick, go ahead.
I think Amanda was about to say something as well. Nope.
No, I was just probably thinking the same thing that you were, but anyways, go ahead.
Find out in a second. I'd certainly be happy to take some of the thoughts together and see what we have, marry it with some of the structures that we have in other policies, because there's been some really good writing recently for the different policies that are out there. So I'd be happy to take that away and play around with that and send it back to the committee for consideration and editing, and kind of get a first kick at it, and then see if it reflects what people have been talking about. And then we can just have another meeting and see, is this what you're looking at? And if not, parallel to that, we'll be thinking together about what does that mean for a regulation, because it wouldn't happen at the same time, but it'd be kind of parallel thinking. So, and that is something to think about, is where's the differentiation there, and there's going to be a little bit of gray, and that's okay. But we will. But I'd be happy to work with that if that works for the committee.
That sounds great. That sounds super. I see a thumbs up from Pam. And again, moving forward slowly, because we have already done some of these things that we've discussed, and what that might look like in a slow rollout of a new concept. So if anybody has any other comments to add or anything they want to bring up, please do. Erica, go ahead.
Is there any way, while we still have everybody together right now, we could just get the next meeting scheduled?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
I'm looking at the calendar, like, are you wanting to move with the same, we could do the same time on the last Wednesday of April, which would be the 28th. Or is there a better time for people?
I think that works. That works for me.
What is happening on our calendar is free on the 28th of April. I know we've got lots of things coming up. I don't have my calendar right in front of me right now.
No, you'll have your committee day before that on the 27th.
Right.
So it'll be similar to this week. Your committee day on Tuesday, and then Wednesday. There's nothing for trustees on Wednesdays. You do have a couple of meetings later in the week,
Right.
as part of the other ad hoc. So
Exactly.
Keeping in mind that we do have something happening on the Wednesday evening of the 7th, and then we have the board meeting on the 14th, and then if we have this, it would be on the 28th. So that's taking up every Wednesday evening except for one. I'm free personally, but I'm just saying if you're not glancing at a calendar, that's what our Wednesdays are going to look like.
And how is everybody with the time frame?
Is that right?
I think that I'm good with it. I was going to say sometime between a month and at the most 6 weeks, and then I was going to offer to work with Patrick to play
Yes.
around with some language and
Yeah.
get
And
a
so-
draft for us to be more focused and
And so
The
how
elevator speech.
is the time frame for the things that you want to accomplish before we get back together as a committee? Is that giving us enough time to look into the other policy drafts and just get an idea to bring back? Okay.
I think so. Yeah.
Okay.
No, that would work.
Okay. So are we looking at April 28th between 5 and 6:30 on
Yep.
Zoom? And that's okay with everybody? Everybody can meet during that time?
Yep.
April.
I actually like that because usually they're at 7, and that's right when I'm about to sit down for dinner. So 5 o'clock, Rick gets to do dinner. He gets to cook while I'm in a meeting, so it's perfect.
okay, perfect. Thank you.
Okay. So is there anything else that we need to discuss before we adjourn? Are we all good? Do we all have something to do? I don't know. I don't really feel like I have anything to do, but you can always give me a job. Always send me a task and I will do my best to take it on. Okay. Okay, so everyone's good with that. Well, thank you.
Yay.
Thank you, everyone, because your input has been great. And I know that with the spring break and everything, it crept up on us and it got here quickly, and we had still not really formulated our thoughts as clearly as maybe we wish we had, but your input has been very valuable. So thank you very much, everyone. And so we're going to say goodnight so you can all go and have some dinner. So we will adjourn this meeting at 5:57. Hey, good job, everybody.
Time.
Thanks,
Perfect.
guys. Bye.
Thank you so much, everyone.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Bye.